Looking at a really dense but incredibly consequential piece of policy.
The new federal AI executive order. It's
Yeah.
officially titled Ensuring a National Policy Framework for Artificial Intelligence.
And our mission here is to just extract what it actually means for you. Because
Okay.
this order, signed on December 11, 2025, is, it's being framed as this big, necessary step.
Right, to maintain U.S. dominance in AI. The administration is very clear on that. They say the goal is to establish a, quote, minimally burdensome national standard.
But the real conversation, the one we need to have, isn't about what the order says. It's about the mechanism it uses and, frankly, the specific financial winners it creates.
Exactly.
So the question is this really about American innovation, or is it a custom-built shield to protect the AI industry from, expensive lawsuits and state-level regulation?
And that mechanism you mentioned is aggressive federal preemption.
Yes.
It's basically the federal government saying its rules are the only rules that matter.
It just strips states of their power to regulate.
It does. Power they've historically had to protect consumers in, everything. Housing, lending, employment, even healthcare.
So we've used public investment disclosures. We've used legal analysis to really get behind the curtain on this. We want to identify who the strategic winners are
Right.
and which state laws are, now on the federal government's hit list.
It's more than just a policy fight. It's a jurisdictional war over the future of regulation in America.
Okay, so we've established this idea of federal preemption.
Yeah.
Now we have to ask the critical question: who is cashing the checks?
Right.
Because, as we find so often, the architect of the policy is usually not too far from the payout. Let's unpack who the immediate winners of this massive deregulation push actually are.
And that takes us straight to a pretty unavoidable discussion about a conflict of interest. We're talking about the David Sachs factor.
David Sachs, the White House AI and crypto czar.
Yes, and he's not a regulator. He's a very prominent venture capitalist.
Yeah.
His firm is Kraft Ventures.
And the sources we've seen confirm how unusual this is. He was given this very broad ethics waiver to help write this policy. I think legal experts call it carte blanche.
They did, and that context is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
So Sachs did divest from the big players, Amazon, Meta. But his firm, Kraft Ventures, it still holds positions in over 400 investments.
400.
And many of them are these growth stage AI and tech startups. That is the key distinction.
Why is that distinction so important? I mean, wouldn't a company like Google or Microsoft also want a single national standard?
Oh, they'd benefit, sure, but they don't need the help. Big tech has these giant legal departments. They have cash reserves. They can handle navigating 50 different state laws.
It's just a cost of doing business for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the mid-sized startups that Sachs invests in, they are much more fragile financially. 50 different state privacy laws, 50 safety review processes. The compliance cost alone could bankrupt them.
So this executive order just wipes those hurdles away.
It wipes them away for the exact segment of the industry Kraft Ventures is focused on.
So it's less about saving big tech and much more about de-risking the portfolios of venture capital firms. That's a huge subsidy.
Okay, so let's get specific. Which sectors just got their runway cleared?
You can see the winners just by looking at the specific state barriers the EO targets. Take healthcare AI, for instance. That sector faces some of the strictest state laws.
Around patient data, privacy, medical liability, I meant.
Medical liability most of all. I mean, if you're building a large medical model, an LMM, the fear of a state-level malpractice suit, it must be terrifying.
It's the biggest thing holding you back from just deploying it everywhere.
It's the single biggest impediment. So you have a company like GenHealth.ai. They're developing models to help with patient diagnoses. States like California, Illinois, they have these strict safety laws that say you need significant human oversight before an AI can make a clinical recommendation.
In the EO.
It creates a clear path to just bypass those state-level safety checks. It lets Gen Health deploy its tech faster and probably with a lot less costly human review. So what happens when the AI gets it wrong? That's where the liability comes in, right? At the state level.
That's where the order's language is very clever. Take another company, Open Evidence. It's an AI search platform for doctors. The new federal standard, it limits liability for what it calls truthful outputs.
Truthful outputs? What does that even mean?
It's vague, but that language acts as a powerful liability shield. It could potentially protect Open Evidence from a crippling malpractice suit if the AI provides flawed information that leads to a bad patient outcome.
It sounds like it just transfers the entire cost of a catastrophic failure from the company and its investors to the person who gets hurt.
That's the fear.
If the AI is shielded, the patient is left holding the bill.
That is the fear voiced by so many legal analysts. It's a massive de-risking effort, but it's disguised as a safety standard.
Okay, let's pivot. What about the government and compliance sector? These are companies selling AI directly to the government.
Right? And that market just got a lot simpler and a lot more open. Before this EO, a lot of states were passing what they called AI transparency laws,
For government contracts.
specifically for government contracts. These laws basically said public services can't use a black box AI to decide, say, who gets a contract or who's eligible for benefits without explaining how it made the decision
And the EO targets those laws.
directly. The executive order explicitly blocks those state transparency requirements. So it guarantees that a company like Starbridge.ai, which makes AI for government procurement, can keep its algorithm a proprietary black box. They don't have to show their work to state auditors.
So the government is essentially guaranteeing opacity for its own contractors.
It is. And then for a company that automates compliance itself, like Norm AI, it's an ironic win. Their whole product is navigating complex regulations.
Right.
By simplifying 50 different, often contradictory state rules down to one minimally burdensome federal one, their product becomes way more appealing and scalable. One product for the whole country.
Okay, let's move on to deep tech and SaaS software as a service. What barriers were they hitting at the state level that this EO clears out of the way?
This is where you see the most direct impact on, the average worker. State labor laws were a really hot area for AI regulation.
I remember this. States like Colorado and New York were passing laws about AI monitoring employees.
That's right, restricting how AI could be used to surveil workers, monitor keystrokes, evaluate performance, all without very specific consent.
Here we're trying to stop the creation of a sort of a digital panopticon in the office.
Exactly. And the EO targets those laws. It allows these huge platforms like ClickUp to just seamlessly roll out their AI employee efficiency features across the country.
So they can monitor and analyze worker output without worrying about violating some local worker protection act.
And your state's attorney general is now preempted. They can't intervene for you.
Yeah.
So yes, your employer can deploy an AI to track you, and your state government is basically powerless to enforce its own local protection. And one last one. For a company like SourceGraph, which makes AI coding assistance. I mean, these models are trained on vast amounts of code. The EO preempts any state law that might try to require proof that the AI-generated code wasn't, stolen from a local creator.
Which just guts the copyright and liability risk for them.
It makes their business model much, much safer from state-level legal challenges.
This feels less like setting a baseline standard and more like strategically knocking down every single expensive obstacle states were trying to build.
It is strategic.
But it gets more aggressive. The federal government isn't just setting this standard, it's forcing states to comply. It's using financial and legal weapons. This is the coercion part, and it's pretty aggressive.
It is a stunning display of executive power, really. It uses two very powerful mechanisms to, punish or just neutralize states that don't comply.
Okay, what's the first one?
First is legal shielding. The EO creates a Department of Justice AI litigation task force.
A federal task force, not to prosecute AI crimes, but to sue states.
That is its sole responsibility.
Hmm.
To sue any state that tries to pass a law regulating AI that goes beyond this new minimal federal standard.
That just flips the whole legal dynamic.
Completely. Normally, a state like California passes a tough consumer law, and the tech giant has to spend millions on lawyers to fight it.
Right. Yeah.
Now, the federal government, using our tax dollars, will jump in and fight the state on the tech giant's behalf. It's a publicly funded legal defense for profitable private companies.
The taxpayer is now subsidizing private legal defense instead of public safety. So what's the second weapon? You said it was unprecedented.
The second is financial coercion. Legal scholars see this as, unprecedented in this context.
Yeah.
The order tells the Department of Commerce to withhold federal BEAD funds from any state with onerous AI regulations.
Wait, BEAD funds, that's the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment money. That's billions for building out internet infrastructure in rural areas.
It's absolutely critical for closing the digital divide. And the threat is very real. A state could lose billions in federal money. Money for schools, hospitals, rural businesses, just because it passed a law regulating AI bias.
So they're holding public infrastructure hostage.
That's the view. They're holding it hostage to make sure states don't pass consumer protection laws the industry finds too expensive. It puts state legislatures in an impossible spot.
Protect your citizens from algorithmic discrimination or forfeit billions in essential infrastructure funds. So let's look at the real-world impact of this. What happens in Colorado now?
Colorado's AI Act was a really big deal. It was designed specifically to prevent AI discrimination in three huge areas: housing, employment, and lending.
So if an algorithm denied you an apartment or gave you a worse loan rate because of your race or gender, that state law gave you recourse.
It provided accountability. And by blocking this, the federal standard effectively removes that state-level liability for discrimination. The federal standard might have some rules, but it weakens your avenue for any kind of legal recourse.
And Florida, they had some very specific protections they were trying to pass.
Florida is the perfect example of this jurisdictional war. The governor there had pushed for an AI Bill of Rights. It was aimed at banning insurance companies from using AI as the sole reason to deny a claim.
So for health coverage or hurricane insurance?
Exactly. Things critical to that state. And the federal veto just nullifies this, which means Floridians lose the right to demand a human review if some InsurTech AI says no.
The state wanted to guarantee you could appeal to a person.
And the EO prioritizes the speed of deployment for the insurance company over your right to that human oversight. It removes that guarantee.
They also had a law about deepfakes in politics, HB 919.
Also at risk. The EO's language could frame state labeling requirements as compelled speech that stifles innovation.
So no more mandatory disclaimers on political ads using AI.
It puts them at risk, which saves AI political consulting firms some money, sure, but it leaves all of us less able to tell what's a real political ad and what's a sophisticated fake, especially, heading into election season.
So when you zoom out, is this really an innovation mandate, or is it just a liability shield? You have the administration's stated goal of global competitiveness, but then this profound fear of lost accountability. Let's try to look at both sides.
Okay, let's start with the pro-innovation case. Proponents argue the biggest threat to U.S. tech is this patchwork problem: 50 different sets of rules.
And it is a fact that a single national standard lowers the barrier to entry for startups. It helps them scale.
It does. And the competitive argument is always framed in these very stark terms. We have to move fast or we'll regulate ourselves out of the race. They point to Europe's AI Act as an example of bureaucracy shackling industry.
So this is about beating China.
That's the argument. Prioritize speed over caution. And there's also that interesting legal argument they make about the anti-bias laws.
Right, the truthful outputs idea.
Yes. The order's language suggests that forcing an AI to be fair based on race or gender is making it alter truthful outputs to meet some political goal. So they're basically arguing the EO protects the AI's free speech to report its raw findings, even if those findings just reflect existing societal bias.
Okay, that's the argument for it. Now let's look at the other side, the crony capitalism case.
This side argues this is just a classic deregulation strategy, and it's being run by an official with deep financial ties to the exact part of the industry that benefits most.
And the strategy itself, federal preemption, isn't new.
Not at all. We saw this in the banking and utility sectors decades ago. And the goal of preemption is almost never to raise safety standards. It's to erase strict state laws and replace them with a minimal federal ceiling on punishment.
So you move the power away from the state house where citizens have more influence.
And you move it to Washington, D.C., where industry lobbyists have the advantage.
Mm.
And the most tangible cost of that is lost local protection.
For the average person.
For the average person. If you get discriminated against by an AI, or your deepfake image is used without consent, this order removes the local police officer on the beat. Your state attorney general, who is often the fastest way to get help, is now legally barred from intervening in a lot of these cases.
So this EO is, it's undeniably great for the AI industry and its investors. It cuts liability, it slashes compliance costs, it guarantees rapid deployment.
But for the public, it's a massive trade-off. The pursuit of innovation comes at the direct expense of state-level legal rights. The primary effect is a transfer of risk. The cost of algorithmic harm gets moved from the corporation to the individual consumer.
And that really is the critical conclusion of this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
The federal AI order is incredibly effective at clearing the runway for American AI companies, especially those backed by certain VCs, and it does it by using pretty aggressive coercion against the states.
And this whole situation has really pushed the conflict beyond just normal partisan politics. It's become a jurisdictional war. Yeah. Just look at the unique position of Florida. This executive order has created this rare Republican versus Republican legal fight. You have the Florida governor fighting for more regulation to protect citizens from insurance AI.
While the federal administration is fighting for less regulation to protect the companies that make the AI.
It just shows how those traditional political lines can blur or even just vanish when this much wealth and this kind of technological acceleration are on the table.
It really forces you to think about how the balance of power between the federal government and state governments shifts when a single industry gets this much leverage.
And the question that's left hanging over all of us, over the consumer, is whether this minimally burdensome standard will stay low forever, or if the lack of state pressure will eventually force the federal government to act, but only after the first inevitable major crisis happens.